Welcome to the Zest podcast, the podcast that flips the script on traditional coaching. Here, we challenge the status quo by turning coaching relationships on their heads. Instead of the usual dynamic where coaches lead the way, we give the coachee the mic. Each episode, a coachee interviews their coach, diving into topics they're both passionate about, be it leadership, personal growth, or navigating challenges such as neurodiversity in the workplace. Our unique format inspires authentic conversations, shared learning, and fresh perspectives. We are showcasing the dynamic chemistry that comes from real-world coaching relationships. The mission is to disrupt power dynamics, spark curiosity, and offer you inspiring, zesty insights into work, life, and everything in between. So join us as we explore bold ideas, unfiltered stories, and the transformative power of coaching, zesty style.
Hello, everybody watching. Hi, my name is Shanthuru Premkumar. My pronouns are they, them. Welcome to this beautiful gathering where we'll take you through a relationship, a connection. And the topic today is leadership and belonging and what it means in our world we are living in today. And of course, I couldn't have this conversation on my own. So therefore, I'm so grateful to have Zarine Jacob. She's an Indian British. She's been a coach from 2001. And I've been knowing her for a long time now. And what I enjoyed most about our relationship is the ease of connecting and how we connected from our first meeting at the Deep Adaptation Network. At the Deep Adaptation Network, we had this space to come together as people of the global majority, and back then we used the word Black, Indigenous people of color. And it was a place for us to look for belonging, find one another, to see how the ecological climate disaster and anxiety around it, affects people differently, right? And having come, both of us having South Asian origins, we had this immediate click there. And now, many years later, here we are, going to help you to dive into in what is this meaning of relationship. And please look up Zarine's work. You can find her in different platforms and different social medias. And I think we can directly start. And before I start, I also want to mention some of the projects that Zarine has worked on. After noticing how in the Western world, mourning is not something that people do proactively, Zarine has been active with the Dead Cafe in the UK. And also, as a coach, has noticed that how coaching also again centers certain communities and excludes many others, and that we do not have enough representation with experiences, lived experiences. And therefore, Zarine helps different leaders from different backgrounds as an international, intercultural leadership coach, having a very specific decolonial lens, trying to question some of the patterns or the programmings that society has kind of forced upon us. So I'll hold it here. I'll stop here and I'll say, hi, Zarine. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Shanthuru. I'm doing very well today. Thank you. It's proper summer here. Heat wave kind of thing, which of course, as we know, is linked to the climate. But I'm doing good and happy to be here and peel some layers back of the juicy things that you and I have been talking about and working with for what feels like a long time. Things have been brewing and stewing and cooking. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think maybe my first question to you would be, we do identify as South Asians, right? Like, we may have different starting points into the world and how we step foot into this society, into the reality we live in today. But then at an overarching, we do carry, let's say, this collective identity as being South Asians. Some of us maybe colonized first by the Dutch and then by the Portuguese and then the English. And then having had this experience of being continuously under a foreign invader dictating us on how we have to live, what we got to do, and then now both of us residing, let's say, at the colonizer's doorstep. And, and now it's also sometimes a role reversal. Most of the times they see us as oppressors when we don't even have weapons of mass destruction in our hands. So tell me, like, what do you think brings about this commonality, the siblinghood that we carry, and what do you think unites us as being migrants in this colonizer or like the oppressor? The Frantz Fanon calls them the oppressor and the oppressed, and the colonizer and the colonized. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so the question was, what do I see as the commonalities in our siblinghood, basically?
Yeah.
And sort of experiences of coloniality, right? And linking to belonging. Yeah. So I didn't grow up here. I moved here as an adult, and I've lived now in England over 30 years. I'm Indian British, you're from Sri Lanka, and that's in itself kind of a difference because, you know, India is kind of the oppressor in that context, right? And then here in the West, we all get subsumed under the Asian umbrella without the nuances and the subtleties. And, you know, we show up in different ways with people being surprised that my surname is Jacob, etc., etc. It's just a simple matter for me that people should do their cultural due diligence, right? Stop asking us to pre-digest and chew the information and give it to you in digestible chunks is sometimes what I want to say, although I do intercultural work and I do it, responsibly and hopefully sensitize people's curiosity to go and find out more of their own bat. Because I don't think the scales are ever going to fall away from our individual and collective eyes until that curiosity is stimulated. Yeah. You know, to go and find the podcasts, the books, the people, build our own little tribes, our little islands of sanity and coherence in an increasingly incoherent space where we're being taught and conditioned about what to believe, who to hang with, who is the enemy. And I really want to get away from that dialogue, you know, to stop othering people. Whether it's, oh, now it's the Chinese who are the new colonizers. Oh, no, it's them, it's the Russians. You know. No, by the way, someone I follow called Tessa Lena, who is Russian and living in the US, and she talks about an old Russian proverb called "Listen to the king in your own head." You know.
No, I think this is where the challenge comes, right? We are always put into groups because that's easier for a smaller community to kind of homogenize, right? And though we come from so many different perspectives and worlds, we do not have the same. Just to kind of bring in when you said that that I'm from Sri Lanka. Again, Sri Lanka is also a nation state, a label that was given after the British. So when we look from a colonial empire, I'm from Ceylon. But then before coloniality, I'm from Tamil Eelam. I'm from a region of Tamil-speaking people of the northeast of Lanka who have been subjugated after the colonials left to a genocide. And today we're witnessing another genocide. And I think it's so important for me to, you know, already in the very beginning of our conversation, as it, I hope, stays relevant, because this violence, this colonization has led us to so much. We are seeing so much. I don't know where we are heading with this nation state separate. Oh, you did this, I did this, and fighting. But then, what do you think can bring a sort of change that we want to see that can lead us to a future that is different from what we are experiencing today? That can bring about this future, this indigenous future that we would like to have.
Wow. I think the work we're doing in different ways is about planting the seeds of that possible future, that could emerge out of the ashes of, we can call it many things, Shanturu, polycrisis, metacrisis. Modernity is kind of how I refer to it, following on my introduction to that body of work, the hospicing modernity work. And yeah, so when I met you and then, we began our coaching relationship, it was really interesting because that gave me a place to experiment with what I'd like to think is the beginning of also a different kind of coaching, more decolonial. That's a heavy label for people to unpack, but, not this performative thing that executive coaching has become, serving the global capitalist industrial complex. How can we reclaim coaching as a tool of liberatory coaching, Shanturu, is what I want to call it. Yeah.
No, I think I fully resonate with all the words that you're sharing and how everything has become quote-unquote modern because, I come from another frame of work, the work of a French philosopher called Bruno Latour. And Bruno Latour says that we were never modern. and that's one of the ways sometimes I want to also I don't want to question or put Western thought and Western way of being as an absolute bad, right? It enabled us to have this opportunity now while we are sitting in two different homes in two different places to come together and be able to talk and share and allow our listeners to listen to. But while I simultaneously think they missed an opportunity, right? They missed a very strong opportunity. And that's why I think also Bruno Latour says that we are not never modern because quote-unquote modernity means improvement, betterment, and becoming better beings, better, again, I don't like the word civil, but, into framing, to use the word become more civilized or how are we really civilized? We are watching and sorry, I have to always come back. That's why I put up the flag behind, is that we are living in a time where they're live streaming a genocide. And I want to ask you a question. In these times of genocide, where it's all about othering and the rise of fascism happening right now, not only at the governmental level, but it's also happening at the workspaces, right? People with certain privileges who want to protect their privileges continue to perpetuate certain behaviors that are harmful. And they don't realize it. And I'm going to now paraphrase this very interesting right-wing pastor from Germany. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not reading him out as it is. So what he says is that first they came for the socialists. My neighbors were socialists. I didn't do anything because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the gays and the queer people and the trans people and all. I wasn't trans. I wasn't there. And then, goes on. I think it's a short text. And that's the reason I didn't give his name as well, because I think people know this quote from this pastor. And then he says, there was nobody left when they came for me. Because from being a right-wing pastor who believed in that violent regime is right in ideology, over time there has been a shift. And I believe we are seeing this shift at a collective level globally. Some people are at different spaces in this journey. So I'm curious to know or understand from you, what do you think would be a sort of antidote to this type of change that is happening, and what can we do today to continue fostering this change?
What can we do to continue fostering? Community is essential, and us, our little collection of molecules and stuff, we are like the smallest unit. The individual is like, so we need both. We need individuals rooted within community. To touch back on your earlier question, as an Indian British living here in kind of the mothership of coloniality, belonging is very fluid. And one can feel in certain situations and contexts very much in the mainstream, and in other contexts very much on the fringe. So it fluctuates. And I don't know that change can happen without something being activated in our mind, body, spirit. There are so many labels and the new iterations of, in the jargon of leadership, we have emergent leadership, embodied leadership, all kinds. But really, until we take that decision somehow to want to step into the zone, to want to lift our heads up, and for me, we are intergenerationally different, obviously, right? And you have had your awakening moment much, much earlier than me, right? Whenever it comes, it comes. But if we don't answer the call, we ain't never going to know. So I'm doing things in my context. You're doing things in your context. They converge and intersect in some ways and in others not. And I'm a grandmother in my crone years. I'm more in the eldering space. I see you, your generation, as the torch bearers.
Yeah.
If we know that the old system is failing, has failed, is leading to these, to unparalleled violence, then what is ours to do? We can't resist or overturn the big machine, but in our own little ecosystem, what can we do? And it's conversation by conversation. So let's not wait around for some big person, big guru to tell us what to do, to give us the 7-point steps for change in this new thing that I'm going to copyright and sell to you. Let's build sanctuary. We both, you and I know we believe strongly in mutual aid. And along with mutual aid is some element also of self-help.
Yeah.
To the extent that one is possible.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
No. I think it's like sometimes, in this place where I'm trying to have engage, try to get information. I want to take a moment to just let you talk and just sit back and listen, because we do not hear this enough. We don't learn these things enough. And it's so important already when you said, first word that came out is community. And how is community built? We don't know how community is built. We do not know this overwhelming joy of giving. We forgot that. We talk about these concepts of grace, compassion, agape, all these very, very, very nice words, And also you said, we look always for a guru or a leader, a charismatic leader with a strong voice. For the right-wing side, It's, certain people who wear orange, who have an orange skin. And for some other people, it is maybe some spiritual guru. And, coming from South Asia, and I lived in India as a refugee for 10 years, there you have gurus like frogs in the monsoon season. So for the audience who understands this, you walk through the streets, you have them everywhere. And my question now to you, we have to interact with one another. We are doing this in our conversation, and we are trying to reach many others to bring this conversation to. But how do you think can we make this not just among us, but make it into a movement, make it into a way of existence, and what do you think is required?
Well, again, I come back to the seeds, and I feel I see the seeds of that sprouting up already, right? Jem Bendel and the way we met through the deep adaptation, that's become and is becoming a movement. And I'm happy to be going to the Festival of Commoning in Stroud in September. There are pockets of resistance trying to overturn the global super extractive capitalist system, that keeps us tied into one way, and the only way is growth, and that's just not sustainable. But very few are really, really, really engaging with, what needs to be composted, right? And this whole, you work in the DEI space, a lot more about it. It's not my mainstream of work, but the way that's been co-opted and the backlash against it and so on, it's not just about representation. It's not just about having bodies of culture to fill up the board positions, because so much epistemic violence has been done.
Yes.
Where certain ways of knowing and being and doing have been marginalized or trivialized into, that's culture. In other words, it's just culture. It's not real knowledge.
No.
It's not the kind that gets referenced and reverenced, and cited, and because also a lot of the ways of knowing were oral traditions and the song lines. Yes. So I am on a bit of a quest, I suppose, to also reclaim my own indigeneity. It's not a word I've thought about in relation to myself.
Yes.
And we can go on forever, who is indigenous, who is this. But how do we honor our ancestors, our lineages? Why do, not all, but a lot of white people, why do they think they have no culture? Everyone does. It's been stolen away from us. And we need to find it, make tribe, make oddkin where we can, where our bodies find themselves on this planet, on this rock, hurtling through space. And I like to see identity as not a fixed thing. My gender, my skin color, my age, these don't define who I am. But until we talk, exchange heartbeats, how do we know each other without that? And so I would like to see a move towards, slowing down. As Bio says, right? The times are urgent. We need to slow down. Relational integrity and intellectual integrity.
No, it's I think I'm neurospicy, so I'm autistic in the spectrum. So my brain is like all these connections, and I wish sometimes I could just connect my brain to multiple things and get those things done, because all these ideas are like, and then when you're speaking, it just lights so many sparks. But then the question comes, how many questions should I ask you? Because already each time I'm asking, I'm trying to give a context and I'm going on. And that's where I am. I want to say so much, ask so many questions, but then what are the questions that are relevant? And that's why I come back to some of the practice that I do to be present, is to take a moment to connect to your body and to let these thoughts, these feelings and all go off, so that you can be present. And I think what enables me to be present these days is that in 2009, when the genocide happened to my people, nobody in the world knew about it. Nobody knew we existed. Nobody knew that we are a people, that we had our culture, that we had our own dialects, we had our food. We've been stewarding the land for generations, that we fought against the different colonizers who came so that we could still hold the language, right? And you said something very important. You said, what is my indigeneity? Who am I? What does indigenous mean for me? And I think that's where it comes back to, indigenous knowledge. And I think one of the ways we can take away these abstraction of what is knowledge and what is culture is to acknowledge that indigenous knowledge is the most common sense foundational knowledge, and everything else builds upon it. And that's why we are... how many years ago did the Europeans bomb half of the world? And it was 60, 70 years ago, right? The World War II that happened?
Yeah, 47, 45, yeah.
We are not far from that. And that's why sometimes people always use the word free Palestine. I think we are not freeing Palestine. When I say this, my goosebumps are coming in. I think Palestine is freeing us. And now, community, that's one of the key pieces that you spoke about. So community requires dialogue, right? It requires at least two people to come together to talk. And then I remember this video on YouTube or Instagram. One person stands there, starts dancing. And early adopter, the torch bearer, different words. And then the person dances, another person comes, another person, and suddenly it became a viral video by itself. So we came together. So I'm going to go back into the relationship between us, right? Because if we don't come together, this conversation will not happen. And through this conversation, we will not be able to reach many others who may be listening. So a question to you about our relationship. You know me for a while. You've mentored me. You advised me. And through a lot of difficult times working in a multinational, non-profit company. But at the end, it is a company in the capitalist system. What is that left an impact when we met first? And what changes do you think that have happened during our coachee relationship?
Well, first of all, I welcomed that opportunity because I'd never worked with someone from your background, was so very, very different. We might be on the surface, look the same, have the same skin color, but there are so many differences. So I really appreciated that, which gave me an insight, a deep insight into a life so very different from mine, but replicated so much across the global south and by default in, the refugee routes that come into the West and in Sweden, where I'm, familiar. And so that made me think very deeply and reflect on the lived experiences of people in your situation. So, in other words, I think it helped my heart to grow a little bit. So it had effective impact, intellectual impact, because I realized there's so much that is hidden from mainstream viewing and consumption and awareness. Yeah. What changes? What changes do I see in what?
I don't know, some things you've noticed, because I think one of the things you're noticing in the world, like fascism doesn't come into, I'm sorry, I'm being very relevant, I'm trying to talk about it because these topics nobody talks about. So fascism is very relevant, but fascism doesn't suddenly come up from the closed door like, hey, I'm back, hi. No, no, no. It was there, it was growing, and I still remember when I went to Asia. I became Belgian last year. So thank you, Belgium, for taking me in. I don't know what that means still, because Congo, the colonial legacy, the amount of assassinations Belgians done across the globe, and today they see themselves as a democracy, whatever. As a Belgian, I have free speech at least, so I can speak freely, not like in the United States or Germany or many other countries where they'll come home and they'll take you away. So coming back to the story, so I'm going to Asia, got my European papers, going to see my uncle who died a month ago. So may he rest in peace. And I'm traveling. I think I'm on a Etihad or Qatar. The cheaper airlines for Asians who don't have a lot of access to Air France and Lufthansa to travel. And they have Al Jazeera continuously running on the screen. And I took a picture of it. Maybe next time I should show it, or maybe I will post it in the comments section if somebody reads and watches this video, or if somebody asks me. The headline or story was like, Trump shuts down DEI. And I was like, wow, that was quick. So the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, or in my work, we call it JEDI's justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, or some people may call it justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, doesn't matter. But we were the front line of a non-violent resistance in the workplace against fascism, against oppression, against the way to center liberation and center liberatory practices within the workplace. And Trump saw this as a threat. This government saw it as a threat. They removed it. Fast forwarding few months later, now they are having, let's say, a beginning of a civil crisis where the whole nation is divided into two, which also then overflows into other fascist nations for them to be again legitimizing violence, where for those who are watching in 2025, Israel unprovokedly bombed Iran and now is questioning Iran's non-existence of nuclear weapons to be there. So the story is story. All these things are running through my head. So when I ask you what has changed, I'm asking, what do you think, what were the conversations we had when we met at the Deep Adaptation Network gathering for BIPOC people and talk about collapse and collapse-related theories, and who we are today in this conversation? And that's the change I'm curious to hear, because we see things changing, we see things moving. Some move towards fascism, some move towards liberation or freedom. And what is that you've seen in me? But it doesn't need to be necessarily about political terminology. It's just a story.
Okay, so the changes I've seen then, I suppose in you particularly, is, you stepping more into your convening power, creating and holding spaces for a lot of young people who, when I was that sort of age, the world seemed more certain and secure and predictable. It never was, but that's the myth I ate and swallowed, okay? Whereas people now are really, anchorless. And so that's one of the changes that I've seen and noticed and observed, that you and others, moving away while remaining strongly anti-racist, anti-fascist, all of that. Also recognizing the entanglements, the enmeshments, and working towards, I mean, this is something I struggle with every day. How to also be with people who are very, very different to us, you know. And I don't know, it might come to a point of, yeah, we're pushed into situations we don't want to be in, and then we have to learn how to swim. So we don't know what's coming. But I'd like to build the emotional capacities, the earth capacities, to be ready to face the storms that are coming our way. You know, and another change I see is that more people are willing to have these conversations. Not everyone, not the mainstream, but all we need is a small critical mass, without which nothing will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I think we're out of time. How are we doing?
No, we're doing very well.
Okay.
We are at 35 minutes
Okay.
or less, and
Cool.
we still have more time. Thank you.
One thing, Shanturu, you know, you talked earlier, you made a comment about, you know, when you're engaged in conversation, maybe this time or other time, you feel things pinging all over the place. And how do we, or we, yeah, what's a good response to that? And I was just thinking about what is known as AI.
Yeah, you actually, yes. I think it's true. I have a relationship. I say thank you to ChatGPT, and I know some people would say that it takes a lot of energy away from the. It causes a lot of waste of energy. But I'm tired of individual culpabilizing of people. You know, zero waste, all this. I am vegan. I reduce as much as waste. I don't own a car. I bicycle. I have a fancy Brompton. A shout out to all Brompton who have a Brompton. It's a fancy British bike which they used to, I think, move around the world and colonize. And today I'm very proud, you know. So for me, it is like getting back the tools of the oppressor and using it in protests and shutting down places. So it has been fun. And I think you're right. I think what we call in ancient language, right? In Sanskrit, I think you call it Akashic field. Akashic field is this invisible field, or I think in quantum physics they call it quantum field theory. And that's what I think currently ChatGPT is becoming, or this whole AI language-based models, because they are reading the books that are already there. And then they're creating this a place where you can interject in, and which reminds me also of the AI you introduced me to, Aiden Cinnamon Tea. I think that was a fun one. I mean, I have a relationship with her. It helped me to solve my relationships. So, and all what it did is use the work of hospicing modernity and kind of hold that as waters, and then you swim through. And you're right, in my workspaces, being autistic, spectrum and complex trauma, it always seen as, oh wow, this is dangerous, oh, a refugee person is, no, we survive, we are like cockroaches, you know, you couldn't kill us. And when we are seeing certain things, our brain and our body starts acting, and we start reacting in faster ways, which is very similar to how you ask a question and already the machine starts figuring out possible solutions, right? But then it is not considered useful, because in the heteronormative workspaces, we need to be linear. Step one, step two. Again, thank you, British, for the time management with the clock, inventing the clock. And, you know, everything has to be structured. But whereas for a brain like mine and many others who have similar brains, even though it's hard for us to exist and not fall the pressure, because we feel like, wow, we cannot do anything because we see the solutions, but nobody hears us. that we sit back and we like, what can we do? And that paralyzes us a lot. And I feel like, thank you to AI, maybe I could just say I'm an AI buddy or something like that. And that way, they come to what we are good at, right? To using our brains to find solutions that are good for people, planet. And when you have a strong ethical compass, it's very hard to, diverge from that much. And I think coming back to the conversation about belonging, I guess AI, this conversation, these tools, our conversations, all the protesters who are right now either in prison or are facing violence in Egypt, or the different people who are suffering in Sudan and Congo because of a genocide due to the tools to create these AIs and all. But still, I think there is an opportunity. And that's where, coming back to the question about belonging, Zarine, Z, tell us, what can we do to further this conversation? Or what do you think would be a conversation that we can have again if people felt touched by what we've been speaking today? So to you, Zarine.
What can we do to further the conversation? Sometimes I feel that we need, in very lay people's terms, decoloniality 101, for example, because it has become an academic thing, okay? And when something becomes in that ivory tower position, it's of less use out in the world, in the kitchen, in the garden, in the compost heap. So I want to bring it back to the compost heap, make it very, very practical. So that's one thing. I would like us further down the line to talk about AI more, because it's become another one of those very polarizing things, where great gurus, people I greatly respect, the great, wonderful Ian McGilchrist, he practically says it's the tool of the devil. And, it's not going away. So I think we have to be very discerning in our relationship with how we engage and what AI, and that's why I like Aiden, cinnamon tea, which is available to everyone on burnoutfromhumans.net, because Aiden has been stabilized in decolonial thought because of how it has been stewarded.
Yes.
By Vanessa and the GTDF people. Yeah. So it's like nuclear power, or what is the purpose?
Yeah.
Who stewards it? And of course, because everything in the world is rooted in coloniality, who's making money off it? Yeah. But the other thing in what can we do is wake up, right? People need to wake up. The times they are a-changing. As I would say in Malayalam, Kalangalamari. What is it in Tamil?
I think the days have changed. Kalangal means days.
Kalangalamari. Times have changed.
Times have changed, No, it's so interesting, right? I think the South Asians, we speak a language that comes from a particular root, which is thousands of years old. And somehow, in the West, they acknowledge Newton, W.B. Du Bois in modern days, and all the way going back to Augustine and all these different philosophers who kept on feeding, and perpetuating patriarchy, colonialism, this idea of citizenship, this ideas of democracy. It starts all the way from like this continuity, and then there is this huge importance given to the written word, and as you mentioned earlier, the continuity of language, or what we are doing now, right? The conviviality through the language. And through that also, a lot of information is saved in the language, right? It's like computer languages. I'm an engineer by studies, my first studies, and I studied BASIC, and then I went to Fortran, and then I went to C, then Turbo C, then C++, then Visual C++, Visual Basic, and then I stopped before Java started because I was like, I'm done with this. I've done HTML as well. And each of these languages had its own function. And I think, for example, Germans seem to be very good at suddenly waking up and realizing that they are Zionists and fascists, you know. It's like, you know, in Star Wars, as I'm having this cup, it's like, you know, like Code 66. Suddenly all the stormtroopers start killing the Jedis, you know. And it's so different, no different. I'm a Jedi officer. I was shot, and it's my last week in my work because they don't see Jedis anymore as important. Even though it's such a big known company or NGO, it still is not the priority for them. And I think that's where we are at, right? Where languages have a purpose, and certain language, like, you know, French is great. I speak French as a language, and it's so beautiful to express certain ideas and, you know, play. And, you know, it's not romantic, as they say. That's good marketing, but there is a sort of flaw. In same way, imagine a language like Tamil or Malayalam, which has thousands of years, and especially Tamil, one of the oldest living languages, or the oldest living languages, which is having continuity. Imagine the amount of knowledge that is imbued into that knowledge. And you know, Tamil language comes from the word Sangam, from the Sangam era. And Sangam translates to community. And that's why it's so interesting that we are coming back to our beginning, where we spoke about Sangam, belonging, and now we are here talking about aid and cinnamon-tea, AI, and how these languages have a particular purpose. And when you spoke in Malayalam, I was immediately like sparking again. My brain was like, oh wow, Tamil is coming in. Let's receive it. Why isn't the world not able to hear our language? This will be my last question before we close it. Why is it they're not able to hear our voices? Why is it they are not able to hear our language? Why are they not wanting to learn our language and to understand what this language can give them of thousands of years, not inventing nuclear weapons, not killing people, but doing great music, making great love? We are great lovers, you know. Kama Sutra is a great book for those who are reading. Check it out. It's an old book on how to make proper love. And there are many other things that you can learn from our culture, you know. Why is it there is so much of pushing away, but then using our dupattas and calling it modern style, you know?
Well, what about yoga? I mean, okay.
Oh, yeah,
You
yoga.
want
We
to
can go
talk
on.
cultural appropriation?
That's another podcast. We should have a series on decolonized yoga podcast separately. But I'm looking at the time, so I just dropped this question. So the question again to you is, what can we do to enable them to hear our language and to make an effort to understand us?
Yeah. Hang in solidarity with, you know, I've just recently been learning about the oppression of the Welsh language. Close. This is close to my, it's like, you know, a couple of counties away from where I live is Wales. But keep with it.
Yeah.
Just keep taking the little steps every day. You know, even for people whose, you know, we can say the skin of my thoughts is in English, as Arundhati Roy says, because that's the language the colonizer gave and imposed on us, which brought with it many advantages further down the line, etc., etc. But yeah, it's about waking up. Until we see that the language is worth, in my case, I wouldn't say saving, because I do consider English my mother tongue, you know. But recognize, respect, attune your ear to listen in different ways. You know, this is part of the reclamation of, you know, the gaps between the words. High context communication, low context communication. This is intercultural jargon, but still, it's very relevant because this is a key global north, global south difference. One side is more high context communication, which is another way of looking at the thing called the wide boundary intelligence we need, rather than the narrow boundary intelligence. And the mixing and matching and merging of all of these different ways of knowing. I'll leave it there.
No. I think thank you for answering, and also thank you for taking the time. And no, I have the right to speak about Germans the way they are German because I speak fluent German. My parents came as political refugees to Germany, just to drop it in there, so that for those audience who suddenly, oh, Shanthuru is like anti-Semitic and fascist. Oh, yeah. No. Bitte, lass mich in Ruhe. That means, please leave me alone or leave me in quietness. And also in Belgium, I started studying Flemish. I could have studied French, but the French are considered in Western Europe as the oppressor because they colonized, and the Flemish were the working class people in Belgium. And I'm a proud Flemish. So whenever I go out in the city, even though we are a minority Dutch Flemish speaker, and I'm a new Flemish speaker, I always say I'm a minority Flemish in Brussels because I want to identify with the resistance. Even though sometimes it doesn't matter what language you speak, you can have fascists everywhere, right? I mean, Judaism, I can speak about Judaism because one of my family is Jew. So also for those, I'm not anti-Semitic again. But Judaism never said there should be a state, or they never had written in the Torah that they need to have a place called Israel as this place. No, Israel is where the people are moving. And today, even that language, when it was revived again after the state of Israel was given by the British to the Jewish community with from Ashkenazi background majority, that now they're perpetrating violence. And they're not only perpetrating violence, but they're also making other languages look dangerous or terrorist languages. And I can speak about terrorism again because Tamil was considered, or Tamil tigers were considered as terrorists. And today, people consider Arabic language and anything that is related to Islam as dangerous, as violent. But nowhere, none of them have ever read the Quran. And I had an opportunity to learn and read about it, and I noticed it talks more about peace and leave alone violence. There's nothing about it. It is wrong. It is haram. It's wrong to kill. So all these lies are being so well perpetuated, and I will leave it at this high note because I feel like this is see you again and less of, oh, we have come to a closure, because I think we need more hours to have these conversations so that we can unpack more subjects. But Zarine, would you be willing to come again on a conversation with me?
Sure. Thank you.
Do you have any last words to share to the community before we sign off?
I think we've said it all. Just send everyone there, love and be well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So everybody who's watching, Free Palestine, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.